Hey guys, welcome to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, where we have an open and honest conversation about everything and anything cannabis, from the cannabis industry to its benefits, challenges, and to stories of real people affected by the law. Today, we're tackling a deeply moving and urgent issue, legalizing medical cannabis in Nebraska. Our special guest is Crista Eggers, a determined mother and advocate fighting for her son Colton, who suffers from intractable epilepsy. We'll be discussing her family's struggles and the potential benefits of medical cannabis and the uphill battle that they're facing to get it legalized. So welcome to the show. Let's be blunt. Crista, thank you so much for being here and being a part of the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Look, why don't you take us a little, your story is really, really, really heart-wrenching and inspiring. Can you start by telling us a little bit about Colton and his condition?
Yeah, absolutely. So my son Colton is 9 now. And when Colton was just after he turned 2, he began experiencing epileptic seizures. And, we saw doctors, we got a diagnosis. We were very fortunate to get a diagnosis very quickly. Started on some pharmaceutical meds. He did not respond. We didn't see a change in the seizures. So we continued trying more and more. And eventually, after about 2 years, we had completely exhausted all anti-seizure medications, combinations. At one time, he was on 8 different medicines. Some were combating side effects from the medicine. And still not getting proper seizure control. So we, at that point, had exhausted everything we could that was available to us, every treatment option. And at the time, we were doctoring up in Minnesota. We had gone out of our home state in Nebraska to doctor and get consults multiple places around the nation. And so up in Minnesota, a group of experts, as they looked at Colton and they said, there's just really not a lot more we can do right now. We'll continue giving him medicines, combating the side effects, right? Prescribing other medicines so that we can get rid of these side effects. And, slowly it was very clear to me that I was losing my child, not just to these seizures, but to the treatments that were not working and making him sicker. And so I really begged them, like, what do you mean there's nothing more you can do? Just look at this little boy, right? Full of life, has a whole healthy life ahead of him. And that is when they brought up medical cannabis. And I, of course, said, okay, tell me more. I'm going to be very honest. I didn't know what I didn't know. It's not something I had a, negative connotation with. I didn't know. And so I very quickly asked, tell me more. What do I do? And they said, unfortunately, we can't have this conversation with you because you don't live in a legal state. It's a minor child. And I grabbed one of the doctors as he was leaving and I said, no. And he had told me he had a son, Colton's same age. And I just said, what would you do? And he said, I would suggest going back home and either moving or trying to legalize it. And at the time, moving, as it never should be an option that patients face. They should not have to leave their homes.
Should that be a refugee?
Right. Not an option. But it wasn't an option right then. So I thought, I guess I'll just go talk to somebody about this medical cannabis because it looks like it's helping, individuals all across the nation, all across the world, and children very much like my son. And that was 5, almost 6 years ago.
And so then the advocacy began, right?
Yes. A few days later, I actually, on my way back from Minnesota, I looked up everything I could about medical cannabis. One of the stories, obviously, that first came up was Charlotte Figge. And there was, some comparisons. And that's when I was like, I've got to go talk to the folks at the Capitol, right? Who are in charge and who are there to help, make our state a better place, keep people healthy, give people the best chance.
And what were some of those first conversations like?
Yeah, I showed up thinking this would be very easy. I'll just, bring a picture of my son, tell him about his story, and it would be, who wouldn't be behind trying to get access to something that could save a child's life? I just could not have imagined how difficult of a journey this was going to be. And I was met at the Capitol building with, 50, 75 other people who their stories were so similar to ours. They were parents, they were patients, they had loved ones at home who were suffering, and they were all there to testify and beg lawmakers to do something and look on with compassion to some of the most vulnerable, suffering individuals in our state. And that was in 2019. And that was the 7th session. A bill had been brought regarding medical cannabis access, and it did not move forward that year.
Met with vehement and adamant resistance, correct?
Yes, we definitely had some support, but there was a lot of miseducation. That's what this whole journey has really shown me, is there's so many individuals that are not educated on this. And I'm the first to tell you, I was not 5 years ago before this affected my family. And I think, being an advocate in this space, what started out as a fight for my child became very clear that there are so many people. This isn't just about Colton, right? It's not just about my family. And that's how I got involved in this, is I just cannot walk away from the thousands of people that, because of their zip code, because they've made Nebraska home, that they're left to suffer and not have at least an option that so many others have and should have.
And then clearly I don't want you to get in any trouble, so be careful of what you say, because this is going to be a podcast that people will be able to look at. But have you been able to figure out ways that Colton can have access?
We're working on it. One of our challenges, and this is maybe not everyone's situation, but it's got to be a lot of folks, is that Colton, because of the pharmaceutical meds he's on, so many of them being used off-label, at dosages that are not tested or approved for, somebody his size, his age. We are watching his blood work very, very carefully. And it's essentially to make sure the meds are not killing him.
So by doing blood tests, you also are identifying whether or not he has any cannabinoids in the system.
Correct. Yep. But in the state of Nebraska, parents are being prosecuted over this.
But what I don't understand, and this get me, if you were to, aren't the states next to you, don't they have medical cannabis?
Yeah, so we're surrounded. Nebraska, South Dakota is north of us. To the east of us is Iowa, where there's a medical cannabis program. You've got Kansas south of us, which does not, but then you've got Colorado, which obviously has adult use and medical as well. So
therefore, if you were to take Colton to another state, medicate him there and bring him back home, if you tell you, how can they tell whether or not he had it yesterday in a state or 3 days ago?
It would be very difficult, right? They could not tell where that cannabis was dosed, when it was dosed. However, we're residents in Nebraska. We live here, and it has been very challenging to find a way to get a medical card for a minor in other states. And also, some of our biggest challenge as well is we need Colton's doctors to be a part of this. And right now they can't be. They would be a criminal alongside me if they were, weighing in on this at all. And I think some of what my family, what's unique is, again, we're talking about a child. That may be different than obviously a patient that's of age and can make those decisions. But they walk this very, very thin line of, we don't know what you're doing. We don't want to know. We can't catch it. And so don't tell us about it. And I think that's very tragic, because the one thing that I need to do is talk with his doctors. I want to be honest. I want them to know that he's on these medications and we're also doing this or want to do this. And so patients are turned into criminals, and they're made to access something that is a medicine for them illegally, risking, so much. And they're having to do it often in unsafe ways because they don't have a doctor who can advocate and work with them.
I'm definitely just so you understand. I do understand what you are going through, Crista. I have one of my 4 children has suffered from epilepsy since that she was in a adolescent onset epileptic, and so I've been through this journey and have seen the other side of it. When the seizures do start to wane, if in fact they do, of course, everybody with epilepsy has a different version of it. So fortunately for my child, she hasn't had any major seizures in the last 9 years of her life, but she's an adult now. She's 41 years old. So I'm crazy that I even had to say that, but yeah, my old daughter. And, but she has controlled a lot of her issues using cannabis along the way. However, what a lot of people don't understand is that the medications that they put your son on legally have a tendency to lead into addiction as they do age appropriately 18, 19, 20 years old. They start getting sick of being on all the crap that they are put on. They, in some cases, can try to medicate themselves and seek out medication for themselves, which are much more dangerous than the medications, are legally as dangerous as the medications that they're on. And then if they do finally come back to cannabis, sometimes they have been on such a crazy journey that the cannabis doesn't work as well, and then it starts to work. It's been crazy. I have you been in a position to be able to take Colton out of the state and try cannabis to see how it's affected his seizures?
Yes. So I will just say that we do know that there is a certain strain of cannabis that seems to be doing something or have done something for Colton. Just we don't know enough, and we want to tweak it more, and we just don't have those resources available to us right now because we don't live in a legal state. And it just should not be something, patients who are suffering and have families, support networks, doctors, jobs, insurance, everything that when you have a child or a loved one, right, who is ill, those things become very, very important. Having a job that has insurance. And so to think that patients should be forced to go to another state to access something that could help some of their suffering, could change their life, give them, compassionate care at the end of life, or possibly like in Colton's situation, we know the number of seizures that he's having. His little brain is on fire all the time. And when people say, are you concerned about what cannabis could do, what marijuana could do to his brain? I'm very concerned at what numerous daily seizures are doing to his brain.
Correct.
I know the outcome of what uncontrolled seizures will eventually lead to. Colton's a strong, very stubborn, just a kid with determination and drive like no other. It's what keeps him going. But that doesn't mean that these seizures aren't taking its toll, and that day after day that we're not going to see the effects as we continue to see as he continues having more.
And please, I'm not judging. I'm just asking. The idea of becoming a medical refugee, finding employment in another state is off the table. There's no possible way.
No. And to be quite honest, this is one of the questions I get all the time. And looking back, as hindsight is always 2020, I will tell you, I wish that when the doctor said you should go move, there is a very selfish part of me that wished we would have, and that I would not have gotten as involved in this. But Montel, the thing is now is that I have been amongst and work amongst and advocate amongst patients and families and caregivers just as myself. And I have just been put in a position where I was in the right place at the right time. I had a little time on my hand, and I thought, hey, let me advocate for this. I didn't expect that this would turn into, that I was running a statewide ballot initiative to get this on the ballot before voters. It has been an incredibly difficult journey, but I do know there are patients out there that they don't have a voice, and they are trusting those of us who have continued fighting, that we're fighting for them. And so how do you walk away from people who are hurting so incredibly bad, knowing what that hurt is like?
And I understand. I believe me. I've been an advocate in cannabis for now over 24 years, and I get it. However, I'm sorry. There comes a time when you're pushing against a rope or you're pushing against the ocean, and it's time to get on a boat and take yourself to safety. And please, I am not questioning your adamant support of others, and it's commendable. You are doing God's work, but at the same time, it's been, you said 9 years, 7 years, 9 years.
So I've been in this for just 5 years now, but this conversation about medical cannabis began in about 2014, 2015 here in Nebraska. So it's been over 10 years multiple, every single legislative session.
Well,
Our
and
lawmakers.
you do understand that this has nothing to do with anything other than pure racism and hatred, right? I mean, let's go back to the beginning of why marijuana is legal anyway.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with medicine. I mean, they're mostly concerned about the industries that cannabis will hurt rather than how cannabis can help. So
Absolutely.
this has
Spot on.
nothing, I mean, this has nothing to do with any legitimate arguments whatsoever. I'm sure that the same legislators that are turning you down are going out and having a sip of wine or liquor or something with their buddies after they get off of work. So,
Absolutely.
full of shit. Excuse my mouth. So,
No, it is. It is exactly right.
yeah, so let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about over the last 5 years the steps you have taken, because I know that you've attempted to get a ballot initiative. You guys attempted to do that back in 2002, right?
2020.
I'm sorry,
And then 2022.
2020 and 2022.
Yes.
What happened in both of those times?
Yeah. So Nebraska is a ballot initiative state, meaning when the legislative body that is elected to do, or supposedly supposed to be doing what the people want, which the people in Nebraska support this overwhelmingly. There is not one part of the state that polls less than 70% support if given the opportunity to vote on medical cannabis. It is very, very strong. And so what happened in 2020 is after, again, 11 legislative sessions, not getting anything done, the decision was made, we need to go to the people. The people support this. We're going to go to them. We have the ability to go to the ballot. And that year we were able, that was the year of COVID. All ballot initiatives kind of shut down. The world shut down. And our ballot initiative ended up moving forward, and we were able to successfully collect 196,000 signatures in about 3 months' time from Nebraskans, and we were certified for the ballot. So we had way more than we needed. And then a few short days later, there was a lawsuit from a sheriff in one of the counties here, and it moved it to the Supreme Court of Nebraska, where it was determined that we had violated the single subject issue. And we had one petition that said medical cannabis is legal and decriminalized for a patient to use and to possess, and that they could also have access through an industry. And it was decided by the Supreme Court that the issue of medical cannabis access and medical cannabis recommendation are two totally unrelated subject matters. So we were tossed from the ballot in 2020. We in the state of Nebraska have had a huge amount of opposition from our former governor. He has been very, very vocal about his opposition.
And why? What is his reason?
Because
gateway drug. It's a gateway drug. It's going to cause the sky is going to fall.
He was actually quoted in a press conference saying marijuana will kill your kids. If we legalize marijuana for medical use, which there is no medical use, it will kill your kids.
And I'm sure you shoved up his butt the fact that the United States government doesn't agree with him because they gave themselves a patent for cannabis back in 2002 that stated unequivocally how cannabis does have a medical efficaciousness. But he didn't agree with that, right?
Nope. So, unfortunately, in our state, there has been, I could tell you about 5 individuals that have single-handedly made this the most difficult journey. I would say most people in the state are absolutely disgusted on this issue. And if the people want this, the people have tried to get it on the ballot, they've wanted the choice to vote. And, somebody, because of the power and money, as a lot has been used against us. And so, what we did was we went back in 2022, we redrafted our language, did it just how the Supreme Court told us to do. And so there were 2 petitions, breaking it just into 2 subject matters. The difficulty with that is that it's very expensive. Something I didn't know, and most people probably don't understand, is to get something on the ballot. Each state's a little bit different, but there's a threshold of signatures you have to get from a certain amount of the population. We also have to get a certain amount of signatures in a certain amount of counties based on voter population. This is a very expensive process. People think, how can it be expensive? To the sheer number of signatures that we need in our state, you have to use paid individuals. This is not a volunteer effort. You have to have money to do this. And the average ballot initiative to get one thing on the ballot in Nebraska costs $2.7 million. In 2022, we went forward, really excited, knowing we had the people behind us. We're going to get it done. And we had a donor who had committed a little over $1 million. And he unfortunately went down in a single engine plane crash that he was piloting. And we never saw that money. And we drove things completely grassroots, volunteers, using just Nebraskans, patients, caregivers. They were out getting the signatures. They were doing the tough work. I've often said our campaign is the most beautifully horrific thing that I could ever imagine and ever seen. And it's horrific because you've got patients who are fighting for their lives, and they're the ones having to go out and fight and get these signatures. It's beautiful because that in itself is beautiful, to see people come together like that and fight for the common good of what they need and what they know the people in our state need. And so we were not successful in 2022. We came 8,000 signatures short on both of our initiatives. And so we failed. I was in charge. I was leading the effort, and we failed to get the signatures. We regrouped and we said, we're going back in 2024. We're going to do it again. We've done it once. We've done it twice. We know we can get there as long as we have enough time and we have enough money. And I will tell you, this go around, we've been collecting signatures since last fall. We have until July 3rd. So just here about 2 weeks from now, a little bit less, to collect enough signatures to get this on the ballot. We have had some funding, but it has been all raised money, grassroots money. People who desire to see this and support this, they're giving the money to print petitions and put gas in the circulators' cars to go and be at an event tonight. And yet again, it is the patients and the caregivers that are out there in the heat and the rain, just hitting the pavement, advocating for themselves, gathering these signatures. And
when you bounce around and you're getting signatures. I know you. I don't know what the numbers are, a little short right now. However, hopefully that'll change in the next 15, 20 days. I mean, when you're gathering signatures now, you're probably going back to the same people that signed in 2022, same people that signed in 2000. Don't they say, are you kidding me? I thought this was already done. I mean,
they do. That's a huge challenge for us, is that people are like, I've signed before. And, I tell them, I know you have. Thank you so much for your support. I know you signed once and you probably signed twice, and I'm asking you to sign a third time. Because you start over, right? It's not like you bank up those signatures, unfortunately, and just, move on. You start over. And we have grassroots collected over 140,000 signatures on our own, on 2 initiatives spread across 2. We need 87,000 valid signatures. We came in with 100,000 2 years ago, and that was not enough. After the state tossed signatures for validity, people were not registered voters. Somebody signed as Matt instead of Matthew. Very, very technicalities. But what we know is we can't come in with just over, right? We have to have this huge buffer. And that has been the challenge, is raising enough money to get this done, especially when Nebraska remains just a handful of states that are still doing this. I mean, I will tell you, most people are like, what do you mean we're still fighting this? It's 2024. All these other states are going on to adult use, and here's Nebraska still fighting to get patients, access to a medicine, to a treatment option. So there is some of that, and people are tired. People are they have lost faith, I think, in this process. I'm one of them that is barely hanging on to faith that this process is fair and just, and that if we get it on the ballot, it's done and over with. We're there. The people vote on it.
But 2024 comes around, we're here, and November comes around, and you can't be on the ballot. Or let's say you are, and if you are, you'll probably pass with the fact that over 70% support. Yeah. However, what happens if it doesn't happen again this year? You're gonna roll up the sleeves and do it? Huh?
Nope. I'm personally, I am done. This is my final time. I will not do this again. And I will be very clear. The reason is that this form of government, this system of government that has given us this process to do it, it has failed. And we have been taken advantage of. And we have done everything we can. And I I hate to think about that being the outcome. I still am very, very excited, motivated, hopeful, determined that we will be certified for the ballot, getting these signatures we need in the next 2 weeks. But no, my family will. To be quite honest, at times I've wondered, why am I fighting so hard to stay in a state that the people who are making the laws and upholding the laws clearly could care less, right, about my son and about patients who are hurting. Something that's been done all across the nation, and the sky hasn't fallen, and children didn't all of a sudden start dying, and these misconceptions and this fear, right, that the opposition does try to drive on this. Thankfully, one thing that's come from multiple failures has been that we have educated a heck of a lot of people out there. And I get to talk to people that back in 2020, they didn't sign, and they'll tell me that. I didn't know how I felt about it. I wasn't sure. And slowly, right, people like myself sharing my story, our family story, and just the conversation happening, people their minds have been changed and their minds have been opened. I have patients that come up to me and say, I was so against this. And then my grandson, encouraged me to try something for my arthritis. And this 79-year-old woman said she gets gummies, it helps her arthritis, and she can go back to making funeral meals for her church.
But she's getting that on the black market.
She is. Yes. Yep. Or illegally, right? Of bringing it across state lines.
So therefore, in the black market or illegally, Nebraska is thriving when it comes to cannabis.
Yes, very much so. The narrative that we do not have, that we're just going to keep it out of our state and we're not going to legalize medical cannabis because something else might come along. Oh no, it's already here. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whoever you are, right, that it is accessible everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And we have something also, we have the totally unregulated intoxicating hemp market. And so we do have products, and we have vape shops that are selling products that are very, very dangerous. And I'm not speaking to all of them, but there's no regulation. There's no testing.
Oh, let's clearly, let me just tell you something. Anybody out there right now who's messing around with some of the products that are being derived from hemp that are being pushed into using chemicals to turn it into some sort of a THC type of product that's THC-8 is crazy. And the fact that they will allow that to be sold, and what are they doing about that? I'm sure it's in every one of your.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that here, a few years ago when we started seeing these shops and seeing that, wow, now we're not just stopping at hemp, the writing was on the wall. And the state of Nebraska has turned a blind eye. They've put their head in the sand, and they've continued pointing at these parents who are advocating to get their children high. Meanwhile, this market has exploded. I will tell you, Omaha and Lincoln are two large geographic population base. And there's 147 stores between Omaha and Lincoln that are selling these unregulated products. And just this year, the state finally said, oh, I think we have a problem. Everything that they've tried to make what a medical program is going to turn into, the Wild West is here. The Wild West, there's no packaging restrictions. I mean, there's kids going in and buying it because we don't really have regulation that only adults or only someone over 18. It is very, very nasty. And the most unfortunate part of all is that patients are using this because it's their only option, they think. Not everybody has the ability to hop over state lines.
You got to definitely, with your advocacy, you should literally add that to the mix as you're speaking to people, knocking on doors, that's probably one of the most dangerous products that is in the market. Is that?
And some of the most robust cannabis industries markets, in the nation, the stuff that we're allowing to be sold is completely illegal. And when it's being tested here, it's coming with carcinogens, motor oil, tar. I mean, the stuff that's in this is horrible. And you've got patients who are taking this and they're getting sick.
What I can't understand, or I'm trying to understand, what the legislators have to say when it comes to all the valid studies about the medical efficacy of cannabis, the real cannabis. There's over 3,500 peer-reviewed published documents every single year in the last 5 years. So where is their ignorant argument coming from?
I think that at this point, it is surely that you've got people in power who have been elected with money. They've been elected by people that they desire to, work their way up to a certain level, and they're not against it. They actually are for it, but they will not give their green light on it. And I think that's one of the most discouraging, ugly, nasty things that I have seen is that I've talked to lawmakers who are telling me, "Oh yeah, my husband, it helps his, XYZ." Okay, you're telling me you recognize this is real and this is something that people, yeah, I just can't green light it because I need my governor's money. I need my governor to endorse me, for my next race to be mayor, whatever it may be. And to sit before another human being who is a parent, a grandparent, aunt or uncle, and tell me that the real atrocity should be, the public outrage should be parents like myself that have gone on the record publicly saying I would give my child an illicit drug. Um, I don't have words. I have no words to that amount of ignorance. And so there's a point you can't reason with these people. It just doesn't matter. And I think I've gotten that way, and especially going to the ballot, right? Is that the people that care about this, there's a lot of them, they are listening, they are educating, they want to be educated, they want to learn more. And there's a handful of folks in our state capitol that absolutely are behind this. A good majority of them are. And then there's a handful that no matter what, they will never be on board with this. And their reasons would go on and on and on. And you and I would sit here just shaking our head. I mean, just shaking our head. And it's very, very sad. Very sad.
Have you been able to get any help from any groups outside of Nebraska, any other states, advocacy groups that have come through that helped you, inspired you, given you strategies and guidance?
So a lot of strategies, a lot of guidance, definitely a lot of support and help. And that has gotten us to where we're at. Unfortunately, again, in our state on this issue, with going to the ballot, you have to have money. And that has been very, very difficult. I've been to 7 states. I think I've had about 175 to 200 conversations with many, many people in the industry, advocates, supporters. And that's been our biggest thing is money. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's really hard when I have conversations with my kids. I have 2 boys. I have an 11-year-old, and then I have Colton. And, they understand some of this. We talk about how we're working to get people medicine. And this is something that this could help Colton. And we fight for things we believe in because it does matter and it does make a difference. And they know that the reason, my older son knows the reason that they have had to let their mom go off and run a political campaign and fight for 5 years. My oldest son knows it's because we don't have enough money. And one of the most difficult conversations I ever had was when I decided we were going to go back and do this in 2024. And, in his mind, why would people not want to give money to help Colton? Because we love him, and don't they love him? And to try to give him an answer of why money and power and politics has kept his brother not to have this option. And then he went to his piggy bank and he gave me money and he said, I hope we can get a lot of signatures with this. That's not fair. That's it shouldn't be that way. Along with
that, what other, this is clearly taken a personal toll on you, your family throughout this entire deal. Are you hopeless at times, or do you think that maybe this time around you may get it?
I think that in the situation we're in, something that is just part of our lives, Colton's health, that there's a part of you that always has to find something to hang on to hope. And I have never lost hope, but I am very tired and I'm very weary and I am beaten down over this. There's no doubt. This is not, this is not what I do. I was a mom raising children at home before I got into this. And it should not take a mother driving her life and her family's life into the ground to try to get a plant legalized for a sick child. It shouldn't take that. And I think the hardest thing for me is that I have spent all this time away from my child. And there's always that horrific thought of, what if Colton's not here? Or what if this wasn't worth it? What if this doesn't help Colton? And that creeps into my mind, once or twice a day. And then I get out there and I have conversations like this, and I meet the cancer patient who's out there advocating and brings in 10 signatures, and she wants to talk and she wants to share her story. And then she hugs us and she cries and thanks us for fighting so hard. And then you're centered again, right? And you remember what you're fighting for. And every night when I go to bed, tell my kids good night. We talk about. Colton always asks, "Did we get a lot of signatures today? Are we getting the medicine? We're almost going to get the medicine." And you know what? I had to finally find a way to answer that question in a way that did not completely take me down. And the answer to that question is, every day I tell him about somebody that's out there fighting for him and for so many others. And we talk about that. And we have that conversation. And I do know, and I believe, I would not be still doing this, that there will someday be a mom that will go to their doctor and they will have this recommendation and they won't have to go do all of this. And that will be a wonderful day, because I sure wish that was what we had.
What do you
But we
think?
don't.
I'm sure you're following the law and you're following the news. I know you heard that the DEA, because of Biden, has decided they are going to reschedule this to a Schedule 3 drug. When that happens, Nebraska is not going to be able to not allow that to happen.
Yeah, it's quite timely. It's obviously way overdue. I'm very excited. I actually have followed up with some of these elected officials who their big thing is, well, once the federal government does something about it, we'll talk. And, I'm really excited. I sent them all emails and reached out and said, I am so excited that now we can have this conversation, because guess what? The federal government is clearly saying there is medical use. And my other big push is that a state like Nebraska, that remains, again, one of a couple that does not have anything in place, no regulation, no industry, no rules and regulations, that when this comes down and is all of a sudden federally decriminalized, I'll tell you what, a state like Nebraska is in trouble. All the boogeyman and all this idea that it's going to be a free-for-all and that it's going to be on every street corner. Do you know that in the state of Nebraska, that is what the reality might be? Because we have not put anything into place to do something with regulation and keep it safe. And, I have one child, I don't want it in his hands, right? I don't want him using marijuana. He doesn't have a use to use, or doesn't have a reason to use marijuana. But I have one child I do. And so I am a huge advocate for doing it safe, making sure the patients that need it can access it safely. That's my biggest thing, is we need to do something. And the fact we have not even been able to get even a small, narrow right to try bill for children only, we could not even pass that. That's what just, again, tells me we have to do this, because the right thing for Nebraska is to actually pass a medical law. I truly believe that.
Sure. Like you, honestly, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story today. Before we wrap up, how can listeners help you? How can they support you? Where can they go? Is there a website?
Yep, there is. NebraskaMarijuana.org. And, when this airs here, we will probably be at about 10, 11 days out from signature turn-in. And, I love hearing from folks who have heard our story. And I'm going to be very honest, the way people can support is they can donate. And when people think about what does my $5 donation do? I get to see what those $5 donation. And I know that today I've brought in $27 that I'm going to be able to get a tent for my folks that are going to be at a farmer's market this weekend, collecting signatures in the 95-degree heat. We print petitions. We are employing Nebraskans at a very, very just $1 a signature. It's not even putting gas in their tank. This is a passion project. This is something that it is very much grassroots. And I've got to believe that if every mother that was out there that comes upon this and listens said, gosh, I'm sure glad I don't have to fight this fight right now. And that $8 Starbucks, maybe I could donate that, because they're doing something really great in Nebraska. And, people in our state who hopefully see this too, it's once in a while people say, oh, it doesn't really affect me. And I think that's such an arrogant and very uneducated comment to make, because, and I often will say, I am so thankful. You are so lucky that that you don't have a need for this medically. But I can almost guarantee that sometime, right? Next week, next month, 10 years from now, you or someone you love will be touched with something. And this conversation will be pertinent to your life. And I think, unfortunately, then you'll care. But guess what? Then it's too late.
Too late. Yeah. Well, look, honestly, my dear, I can't thank you enough. And all my folks who were tuned in and watching, let's be blunt, you heard it here, folks. There are many families like Crista's out there who are fighting this compassionate type of cause, and they need your help. So make sure that if you get a chance, you can send in whatever you can, $1, $2, $3, 50 cents, whatever, to exactly where, Crista?
NebraskaMarijuana.org.
NebraskaMarijuana.org. I hope that this initiative passes. I'm going to try to get you back once there'll be a lot of conversations happening after this next cycle of voting in America, but hopefully this one will rise to the top. And I hope that people in Nebraska understand what you're doing is really God's work and should have been done 100 years ago. But unfortunately, just because of stupidity, we're where we are today. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. And for all of those out there, make sure you keep tuning in to Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Stay informed, stay engaged. Let's make a difference together. And I'm going to see you next time. Take care. See you on the next one. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments.